It can be quite frustrating for both you and your baby when they can't clearly tell you what they want. Your baby or even young toddler may be a bit too young to speak, but that doesn't mean they can't communicate with you. In this video, I go over why you should teach your baby sign language. Generally, most babies start speaking their first words anywhere around 8 to 12 months old, and at 18 months, they're able to talk more clearly. At 24 months is when they're able to start to link words together, with some even able to say some simple sentences. Those are just ranges, as no two children are alike. Your baby could actually start talking earlier or later. There's no real way of knowing when they'll be able to communicate with you verbally. This is why teaching your baby sign language is a great way for them to communicate with you non-verbally. You can start teaching your baby sign language as early as 6 months, but keep in mind, most babies won't start signing back until about 8 to 12 months. At this point, you might be thinking, well, if babies can start saying their first words at 8 to 12 months, why should I even bother teaching them sign language? Even though your child can start saying words at 8 to 12 months, they won't be able to speak very well and very clearly. Their library of words is going to be fairly limited. They won't be able to use the words to tell you something a little bit more complicated, like they're all done with their meal. Another thing you might be concerned about is, will sign language slow your baby's verbal development? Research has suggested that teaching sign language to your children is actually beneficial and stimulates your baby's desire to learn more ways to communicate, including talking. Let me know down below in the comment section if you ever thought to yourself how great it would be to know exactly what your little one wanted, especially when they're fussing around. I know I do. Teaching your child sign language is actually fairly simple. It's basically repeating gestures and repeating the corresponding word that goes with it. You're not trying to teach them every single word you're saying, but just the main words to get the idea through. For example, I wouldn't teach my son to sign the full phrase, "Do you want to eat?" I would just teach him the sign, "to eat." Alistair, do you want to eat? The way I teach my son different signs is I'll say the word and make the gesture at the same time. If you're about to give your child milk, either from a bottle or breastfeeding them, simply say the word milk and gesture the sign for milk. Remember, repetition is key, so every time you say the word, you also demonstrate the corresponding gesture. Another thing to keep in mind and pay attention to is your baby might not be able to perform the gestures perfectly. And what I mean by that is your child may be doing a modified version of what you taught them. For example, the more sign is this. My son for the longest time kept doing the more sign this way. And recently he's refined the gesture to be a bit closer to the actual sign. The best way to correct the gesture is by simply letting them keep signing the way they know how. But whenever you say the word, repeat the correct gesture to your baby. It can actually be quite entertaining to see the random gestures your baby associates with different words. This is the gesture for drink. My son raises the roof when he wants a drink right now. Every baby is unique. Some gestures might take longer for them to learn, so give them time and don't get discouraged. But usually, before you know it, your child will start to copy you and gesture back to you. And voila, your child is communicating with you and you know exactly what they want. My wife and I started teaching my son sign language at about 7 months old. Now he's 17 months old and he's able to say simple words, but not very consistently. Most of our communication from him is done with sign language still. I'm quite glad that we taught him sign language, because otherwise he'd just be pointing in a general direction when he wants something. While pointing generally works, it's a bit hard to pinpoint exactly what he wants. With sign language, it helps greatly to know exactly what he wants, whether it's to eat, to drink, or more of something. If you're trying to figure out which signs to teach your child, here are some that I think is a great starting place. Sleep, eat, milk, drink, more, all done, please, thank you, book. There are plenty of resources online if you want to learn more signs to teach your baby. But personally, I found that a book is actually quite helpful, especially if you're trying to limit screen time usage in front of your child. Books are a great quick reference without reaching for our phones. The book I used was the one from the Lovevery's Inspector Play Kit for months 7 to 8. The great thing about this book is that it uses real photos to show different signs. Most of the board books I found online for baby sign language use cartoon images, and cartoon images sometimes is a little bit harder for a child to connect the dots. The reason I prefer board books over paperback is that my son loves reading books, and board books are simply more sturdy. If you're new to this channel, consider subscribing to my channel for more Montessori-inspired videos like this. Give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video, or maybe you learned something from it, and I'll catch you next time.